The Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Mr. Courtney Williams, Chairperson for the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Mr. John McIntyre, Chargé d'Affaires, United States Embassy, Kingston, Mrs. Shani Russell Robinson, the Manager for the Trafficking in Persons Secretariat at the Ministry of National Security, Mrs. Nasalo Thompson, Project Director at the Winrock International, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, good afternoon. And welcome to the launch of the Trafficking in Persons Handbook. And my name is Nastasia McFarlane, and it is indeed my pleasure to be your Master of Ceremony for this afternoon's proceeding. Now, trafficking in persons is a form of modern-day slavery, a human rights violation that constitutes a crime against the individual and the state. Now, crucially, it is a crime against human beings as well as state security. As such, actions have been taken to prevent trafficking, prosecute traffickers, and prosecute and protect the victims, who must be centered around individual humans as opposed to solely state security. Thus, the action of the Trafficking in Persons Handbook, for which we are here today. The handbook outlines the definition of trafficking in persons, indicators of trafficking in persons, how to identify potential victims who are victims of trafficking, how can persons assist those victims, and the national referral mechanism. Now, I won't subject you to my limited information about trafficking in persons and human trafficking. As such, please help me welcome Mrs. Shani Russell Robinson, who is the manager of the Trafficking in Persons Secretariat, to give you an overview of the handbook of the Trafficking in Persons. As she comes, please make her welcome. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Ms. Nastasia McFarlane. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Dr. Horace Chang, Permanent Secretary, and the Chairperson of the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, Mr. Courtney Williams, Mr. John McIntyre, Deputy Chief of Mission of the U.S. Embassy, Jamaica, and all other distinguished guests. Good afternoon. The Trafficking in Persons Handbook was developed in collaboration with the Winrock International under the Child Protection and Compact Partnership. The CPC partnership was signed in May of 2018 and is a 4-year project between the United States of America and Jamaica. Under this partnership, there are 3 partners: Winrock International, Warnoth Group, and the International Organization for Migration. The objective of the partnership is to strengthen the Jamaican government efforts to effectively investigate, prosecute, and convict child traffickers, identify and provide comprehensive trauma-informed care for more child victims of these crimes, and prevent child trafficking in all its forms. The handbook is designed to increase the knowledge of trafficking in persons within the respective ministries, departments, and agencies, and serves as a guide for agencies and organizations who may come in contact with suspected victims of trafficking. It addresses several aspects of human trafficking, as you would have heard earlier. It outlines the definition of trafficking in persons, the indicators of trafficking in persons, and the difference between trafficking in persons and the smuggling of migrants or human beings, how to identify a potential victim of trafficking, and how can persons assist, protect, and refer victims of trafficking to the relevant state agencies. In addition to the above, the following documents are also attached to the handbook as annexes, and they are the Child Trafficking Screening Tool, which was developed by Winrock International in collaboration with the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons. And the screening tool is intended for use by government and non-government personnel who may come in contact with victims and help to identify and provide a written referral for a possible victim. It also has the indicators of trafficking for the following frontline officers, such as the police, correctional services officers, labor officers, immigration officials, health officials, child protection officers, and justices of the peace. And lastly, it also has the National Referral Mechanism on Child Trafficking. The National Referral Mechanism is intended to set out the roles and responsibilities of various government actors and non-government organizations through the 5 phases of response to a suspected victim. And they are the initial report of trafficking and intake, identification and investigation, needs assessment and referral for support and protective services, support and protective services, and lastly, and most importantly, reintegration. It is our hope that the handbook will further inculcate among readers a more sensitive understanding of the suspected victim's circumstances and will, through basic guidance and tools, assist agencies and members of the public at large with employing best practices in the victim referral and will ultimately result in more victim identification. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Russell Robinson. And we know that this book would not be possible without the support of the Winrock International under the Child Protection Compact Partnership. Now, under their patronage, the handbook is designed to increase the knowledge of trafficking in persons within the respective ministries, departments, and agencies. As such, please help me welcome to the lectern Mrs. Nasalo Thompson, Project Director of the Winrock International.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chang, Mr. Williams, Mr. McIntyre, all distinguished guests, thank you for having us here today. On behalf of Mr. Rodney Ferguson, the President and CEO of Winrock International, our team in Washington, as well as the team here in Jamaica, I want to bring greetings and say thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to highlight the amazing work that NATFATIP has been doing in collaboration with all the partners across the country with respect to trafficking in children, and on behalf of Winrock International as well. I want to give a little background on the work that we've been doing on how this national referral mechanism came to be. So, as was previously stated, the CPC was signed into action in 2018, but the work really began in 2019 with a very comprehensive and large-scale consultation process that really sought to get the input of all the major partners and stakeholders across the country with respect to trafficking in children. So the Winrock International team, in collaboration with the partners that sit on the NATFATIP, really went far and wide to speak to all the major partners to see what would a national referral mechanism look like. Who are the partners? What are the responsibilities? How do they relate to one another? When you have identified a child, what are the things that need to be considered? Who is responsible for providing services? How are the children going to be attended to? What are the kinds of issues that need to be considered when you're dealing with children versus adults? So this consultation process went on, I think, I'm going to say, for about 12 months. It started off with 2 major workshops, and it continued for about 12 months. We went back to the partners several times in order to really establish the mechanism that the Jamaican government wanted to adopt for the purposes of identifying and referring children. This is a really important tool that has been developed in Jamaica, and it's not in many other parts of the world. So we really have led the way in many respects with the response to trafficking in children in the development of a national referral mechanism. This process would not have been possible without the support of the United States Embassy. It would not have been possible without our donors at the U.S. Department of State, and certainly not without the technical expertise of our colleagues at JTIP. Everybody played a really important role, and the outcome is that we, as Jamaicans, have a mechanism in place that clearly identifies the steps that need to be taken, the responsibilities of everybody involved, and the actions that need to be taken once a child has been identified. Part of the national referral mechanism, or rather, whilst the national referral mechanism was being developed, it became obvious that we were going to need some tools to support the implementation of the mechanism. And as part of that process, Winrock International developed several tools, one of which was the screening tool. The purpose of the screening tool is really to be able to assist our colleagues in the field who come into contact with children but may not come into contact with trafficked children on a regular basis, to be able to quickly identify key indicators of trafficking that could, highlight a child in need that might need further investigation and further action. So as part of that process, we sat down with our partners and we thought, okay, who needs individualized support in this respect? So we developed an individualized identification referral tool for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, SISOCA, the Department of Corrections, CSOs, CPFSA, the Justices of the Peace, and Ministry of Health. So each one of these screening tools looks at indicators that would be specific to these particular agencies. So for example, with the one for, and also PICA, with the one for PICA, for example, we're asking them to look for indicators of children coming in as well as children going out. What are some red flags, so to speak, that might be evident in a child who's being trafficked when they're being escorted out of the country or when they're coming into the country? So we've worked very closely with all of the partners to be able to really build the capacity and support the national response in trafficking in children with the national referral mechanism, with the associated tools to highlight indicators of trafficking, and also to have a mechanism for referral. So we have a referral form that is part of this handbook that you'll see. And the purpose of the form is to be able to document what are some of the characteristics of the child that the person has come into contact with, and also to whom should the child be sent to, for argument's sake. This is really important for two purposes. One, the people receiving the child who they believe is being trafficked need to know what they're looking at and why they're looking at it. It's not enough to say, oh, we think this child is being trafficked. Why have you come to that conclusion? But also from a data and information management standpoint, it's very, very important that as the government of Jamaica, we have accurate numbers to be able to report, not only for the TIP report, but also for our own planning and strategic management purposes. We need to be able to say we are getting a number of children coming from Westmoreland, or we're getting a number of children coming from St. Thomas, and they're engaged in trafficking related to labor trafficking, or these children are engaged in sex trafficking. We need the information, and so this particular tool is going to be very helpful, we hope, in documenting the cases and also being able to generate the evidence that is necessary for strategic planning, budgeting, and policy development. So with that, I would like to again reiterate our appreciation for being involved in the process. We don't take it for granted. Everybody is very busy, and our partners have been tremendously responsive over these last 3 years, and we're very, very grateful. So as we close out the year, also want to say we're looking forward to next year. And the project will be wrapping up in 2022, but we hope that the legacy of these documents will be with us for many years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Nasala Thompson, Project Director of the Winrock International. And we know that you have had many partners here working in Jamaica, and we heard about SISOCA, we heard about the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the list continues, and we thank you so much for being a part of our launch this afternoon. It was Khalil Gibran who said, "Music is the language of the spirit. It opens the secret of life by bringing peace and with the hope of abolishing strife. To raise awareness and spark conversation about the crime of human trafficking, Shadows After Dark, the 2020 single written and produced by reggae star Albaros, sponsored by the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, NATFATIP, encourages persons to be very careful of whom they trust. Let's take a listen. This is Shadows After Dark.
Yeah. You are a mountain, you are a river, out there is a jungle. Got to be stronger.
You can see a man's face, but never his heart. Trust no shadows after dark. No shadows after dark.
You can show you care. Keep that love in your heart. Trust no shadow after dark. No shadow after dark.
And whatever the circumstance, pushing you to take a chance, you better follow your intuition, telling you to take a stand.
You can see the face, but not the heart of those who wanna do you wrong. So many gone without a trace, gone without a sound. You gotta believe and never let go, never let go. Ooh, because you can see a man's face, but you can't see his heart. Trust no shadow after dark, no shadow after dark. You can show you care, keep your love in your heart, but trust no shadow after dark, no shadow after dark. You can see a man's face, but you can't see his heart. Trust no shadows after dark, no shadows after dark.
Sweetest words, lyrics when them talk, but trust no shadow after dark. No shadow after dark. Be wise, remember mama advice. Beautiful eyes, lies in this. Can't trust the wolf in sheep clothing. Don't take nothing from the man if you don't know him. Soon as you blink, another life will get stolen. Them heart colder than the lake, them were frozen. It's a crazy world we're living on. Open your eyes, you can see a man's face, but you can't see his heart. Trust no shadows after dark, no shadows after dark. You can show you care, keep the love in your heart. Trust no shadows after dark, no shadows after dark. You can see a man's face, but you can't see his heart. Trust no shadow after dark, no shadow after dark. You can show you care, keep that love in your heart, but trust no shadow after dark, no shadow after dark. There is pain in everything, but if hope is what you bring, there's a time and a place to ask for help. Don't be ashamed, even though it might seem hard. Hold on, don't let go. You are careful of the personal information you disclose. You can see a man's face, but you can't see his heart. Trust no shadows after dark, no shadows after dark. No. Protect the mothers, protect the elders, and protect our children from the traps and the snares out there.
See a man's face, but you can't see his heart. Trust no shadow after dark, no shadows after dark. You can show you care, keep that love in your heart. Trust no shadow.
No shadows after dark. The song lyric, you can see a man's face, but you can't see his heart, accentuates how trust can be abused And these words are directed to the young and the vulnerable population of Jamaica and the general world. The power of reggae is demonstrated on the song, which features heartfelt performances by Christopher Martin, Romain Virgo, Dean Fraser, Dwayne Stevenson, Kabaka Pyramid, Etana, Tyrus Riley, Kumar, Morgan Heritage, Raging Fire, and last but not least, Sandy Smith. Next on the program to deliver their remarks is Mr. John McIntyre, who is the Charge d'Affaires of the United States Embassy, Kingston. Please make him welcome.
I always have to adjust the mic a little bit. Apologies, I'm a little short. The Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Mr. Courtney Williams, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Mrs. Naslo Thompson, Project Director of Winrock International, other invited guests, good afternoon. I always seem to have the unfortunate luck, although in this case I don't mind, of following something that is exceptional. And so that video that we just saw was outstanding. My remarks will not probably be as good, but I think we could almost just end there if we wanted to. Although I think we want to hear from Dr. Chang and Mr. Williams. On behalf of the U.S. mission, I would like to thank the Deputy Prime Minister Chang and P.S. Williams for their invitation to participate in this launch event, which is a key milestone under our now $6.7 million U.S.-Jamaica Child Protection Compact. And again, I've said this throughout my tenure here, the commitment of the U.S. government to the people and government of Jamaica stands and will continue to stand. So I just want to get, that's not on my script, by the way. I completely go off script often. Congratulations to the government of Jamaica for its leadership in developing its Trafficking in Persons Handbook, which will be a valuable resource in combating child trafficking island-wide. My appreciation also goes out to our CPC implementing partners at Winrock International, and this is very important, the wide range of Jamaican stakeholders who worked collaboratively to develop critical tools in the fight against child trafficking. What's important to remember is that the objectives of our CPC partnership, namely to identify and provide comprehensive protection to more child victims, to investigate, prosecute, and convict more traffickers, and increase efforts to prevent child trafficking crimes from occurring, which our two governments jointly developed and are committed to. They align closely with the metrics used to assess the government's efforts in the United States Department of State's annual Trafficking in Persons report. It's often referred to as the TIP report. This means that under our CPC partnership, Jamaica has a real opportunity to build on existing efforts to address child trafficking, particularly when it comes to identifying and protecting victims, which I think is what we just saw exemplified in the video and in the song, and holding perpetrators accountable. The tools launched today will help equip Jamaican stakeholders for success in stemming child trafficking. We're now in the 4th year of the U.S.-Jamaica CPC, with the Department of State recently committing additional funds and expanding the implementing partners' activities into 2023. This is a testament to the strength of our partnership. We all need to make the most of the coming months to work towards the remaining CPC activities, consolidating achievements, and ensuring sustainability for the future. To truly make a difference, this means, for example, institutionalizing the training and reference tools that have been developed under our partnership so that they can be brought to bear in combating child trafficking, not just today, but every day. Please know that the U.S. Embassy remains your committed partner. I remain your committed partner in the successful implementation of our CPC. As we head into the home stretch of our partnership, collaboration will be especially important, and with today's launch event, I would say that we're on a solid footing. Let's finish off strong together for Jamaica's children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. John McIntyre, for that assurance for the partnership, the CDC partnership, the Child Protection Compact. And I would just like to reiterate that Mr. McIntyre said it is $6.5 million. Did I? 6.7 million, I'm so sorry. $6.7 million, the Child Protection Compact partnership. So thank you so much for your assurance, Mr. McIntyre. The core emphasis of the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, NATFATIP, are the prevention and suppression of trafficking in persons, the prosecution of offenders, and the protection and provision of assistance to the victims of human trafficking. We've heard from one task force leader, Mrs. Russell Robinson, earlier about the overview of the handbook, and as we come to the closing of the ceremony, we will hear from the other two task force leaders. But before I hand over to the other task force leader, it would be remiss of me not to show the handbook. Now, this is the physical handbook, the physical trafficking in persons handbook. And as we try to get a close-up of it, our technical team, they're working assiduously, thank you so much. This is the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons handbook. It's a physical handbook, and we have it here at the Ministry of National Security. It dons the Jamaican colors, the national colors, black, green, and gold, and it has the logo on the front, Stop Human Trafficking. Thank you, and we will proceed with the rest of the program. So please, help me welcome to the lectern the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Dr. Horace Chan.
Thank you, moderator. She's the resident moderator now, PS, for the Ministry of National Security. Our friend and colleague from the embassy, Mr. John McIntyre, Charge of Affairs, currently in charge. My permanent secretary, Mr. Courtney Williams, Ms. Shane Robinson, who keeps the TIP Secretariat going and has done tremendous work in coordinating and working to keep the activities and the programs of the Trafficking in Persons Task Force going across ministries. And of course, I gather Ms. Thompson from, that's Winrock, am I right? And no one from Warner today? No, all right, the team. All right, same. The launching of this handbook today is a very important step in developing our programs to mitigate and ultimately eliminate trafficking in persons from our society. It is the culmination of the work of a team of individuals supported by a partnership between the Jamaica government and the U.S. government. And I want to express my appreciation to the United States government for giving considerable support to this. We know they do a lot of monitoring and we may have arguments when the report comes out, but their effort and work in ensuring that we can develop an effective program, I said, is appreciated and critical in the whole development of this particular program. Trafficking in persons is a horrendous crime. It is recognized globally as one of the major criminal activity, and hopefully maybe not as big in Jamaica. They said it is the third largest income earner for criminal organization behind drug trafficking and arms trading. And in some cases it might be higher depending on where you are. But it's a horrible activity which we have to give not only training and budget, but give long-term commitment to eliminating from society. It's the most horrendous activity, and it's generated against a lot of those who are vulnerable. But the training program is crucial, and our policy programs, even more than in other areas of criminal activity, which are obvious. You know, everybody who commits a murder, the police is prepared to deal with them. We have the police the tools, the legislation to find them. We have this international partnerships to deal with